You know, we've all stared up at the sky and asked that huge question, where did all of this come from? But what if asking that question is the very thing that's tripping us up? Today, we're going to dig into a really mind-bending idea, that the universe doesn't have a beginning and it doesn't have an outside. Let's dive right in.
It's how our brains work, right? We always look for a starting point, a first cause. You picture that long line of dominoes, and you just have to know what pushed the very first one. What lit that first match? I mean, this single question is behind pretty much every origin story we've ever told ourselves, from ancient myths to modern science.
Okay, but here's where we need to press pause for a second. The idea we're exploring suggests that this whole way of thinking is built on a flawed comparison. We're imagining reality is like some object sitting on a table that needed to be switched on. But what if reality is the table, and the room, and the very idea of an on switch in the first place?
So that leads us right into our first big idea, the first match problem. We're going to look at why this constant hunt for an outside cause might be a kind of mental trap, one that actually stops us from seeing what's really going on.
I mean, think about it for a second. When we're looking for that first cause, what are we really assuming? We're assuming the whole show, the entire chain of existence, is optional, that it could have just not been here at all. We're picturing a time before everything, a state of nothingness that needed a big push to get going.
But here's the wild counter idea. What if there is no outside, no backstage area to reality? What if that whole chain of cause and effect isn't just something happening inside the universe? What if it is the universe? And if that's true, well, where on earth could an external cause even exist?
And this analogy just hits the nail on the head. Asking for an external cause for reality is kind of like asking a river to explain why water is wet. Wetness isn't something that happens to water, it's part of what water is. It's intrinsic. And in the same way, maybe asking reality for an outside reason for its own existence is just, it's asking the wrong kind of question entirely.
All right, this leads us to our second big point, and it's a huge one. Let's talk about the idea that the universe just is. We're going to shift our thinking away from the universe being created in a single event and toward it being in a continuous state of existence.
Okay, so let's break down this huge conceptual leap. You've got the old idea on one side, a created universe. It needs some kind of external cause, it had a single starting point, and its very existence is this really special, maybe even miraculous event. But then, on the other side, you have this new idea, a universe of continuous transformation. It's its own cause. It's not a single event, it's a constant process. And get this, existence isn't a special event. It's just the default condition.
And this, right here, is the most radical part of the whole thing. The universe doesn't need a special permission slip to exist. It's like a circle doesn't need an external reason to be round. It just is. Existence isn't some event that happened way back when. It's the fundamental default condition of, everything.
So you might be thinking, okay, this is some deep philosophical stuff, but is it just talk? Well, that's where things get really interesting. For our third section, we're going to see how this whole perspective isn't just navel-gazing. It actually lines up beautifully with what modern physics has been whispering to us about reality. You see, physics has been chipping away at that old idea of a static, created universe for a long time now. We figured out that time isn't some universal clock and space isn't just an empty box. They're actually dynamic, flexible parts of the whole system. We know that energy and matter are basically interchangeable, just different forms of the same stuff. Heck, even Newton showed us that once something's moving, it keeps moving. No perpetual pusher required. And maybe most importantly, those fundamental laws of conservation tell us that energy is never created or destroyed. It just transforms. All the signs in physics point to a universe that is constantly changing, not one that was made once and then left alone.
Now, this leads us to a really popular, almost fashionable idea you hear a lot, this sort of romance of the universe coming from nothing. It sounds incredibly profound, even scientific, but as we're about to see, it has a massive philosophical problem.
Yeah, this whole concept of creation from absolute nothing, it's more than just a bit romantic. When you really examine it, it's philosophically incoherent. It just doesn't hold up. Let's dig into why. Okay, think it through. For something to come from nothing, that nothing would have to have some potential, right? It would need some hidden rules or properties that allow it to give rise to a universe. But true, absolute nothing has, nothing.
No properties, no potential, no laws. There's no it there to do anything in the first place. It's a total, complete void. It can't be the source of anything because there's nothing in it to be a source.
Okay, so if the universe isn't some object that was created, what does that mean for us, for life, for consciousness? This is where this whole perspective really hits home, because it totally reframes our place in the cosmos.
See, the old views kind of force you into a corner. On the one hand, you have the materialist view. Life is just a random chemical fluke in an otherwise dead, meaningless universe. On the other, the spiritualist view. Our mind, or consciousness, is some kind of ghost in the machine, a visitor from somewhere else. But in this integrated view, it's totally different. Life isn't some bizarre exception, it's just a certain style of organization that reality is capable of. And consciousness, it's not a visitor, it's a higher order, more complex pattern that emerges from that organization.
And man, this has some serious weight to it. Because if there's no external cause, that also means there's no external rescue, no director to yell cut, no author to write a happy ending for us. The seriousness of it all, the meaning, the responsibility for what comes next, that's entirely on us. We're not just spectators, we are active participants in this incredible, ongoing process.
Which brings us to our final, and I think most powerful idea. It's time to stop thinking about creation as some dusty event that happened billions of years ago. Because the universe isn't a product. It's a process. It's not like a finished car that rolled off the assembly line, you know? It's a verb, not a noun. It's happening, constantly, right now. It is a process of continuous, nonstop transformation.
I think this quote just says it all perfectly. Existence does not require permission. It doesn't need to ask to be here. It simply is, and its very nature is to become.
So, I'll leave you with this to chew on. If creation isn't something that happened, but something that is happening right here, right now, then what exactly are we participating in? What are we becoming?